Believe it or not, these are the same animal. On the left is something you might recognize, an adult cat flea, but on the right is something that up to a year or so ago I had never even seen. This is a larval cat flea, and the clip you see now is part of a research project we've been doing in the lab describing how fleas in this worm-like, legless stage are still able to move around their environment. So the jump of an adult flea is one of the most famous insect movements. It's something that's been on my list of things to film for a long time. So while we had the larvae in the lab to study them, I also filmed some adults. And let me tell you, it was a challenge. Here, let me show you that footage and a little bit about what I had to do to gather it. At the bottom of the screen, these two brown dots are adult fleas about to jump. You're seeing them here, filmed at 20,000 frames per second. In this clip, the flea on the right travels around 34 body lengths in just 1/50th of a second. In other words, they're tiny, incredibly fast, and not at all easy to wrangle and keep in front of the camera. So this is what the film set looked like for that clip. Now normally I don't use a cage or anything when I'm filming insects, but for fleas it's a different story. Now the jumping platform was right in there, but they'd still aim their jumps at me or at the camera, and I'd spend 20 minutes after each film attempt on the floor looking for a flea. Now I didn't end up losing any fleas, and I did manage to get some good shots. So fleas launch themselves into the air by loading an internal spring that moves this part of their hind leg when it's released. That bit of anatomy is called the trochanter, and here it is on the flea in the video. When it rotates, that movement is transferred through the hind legs down to the tibia and tarsus, which are covered in backward-facing spines. Those spines catch onto the ground and allow the flea to push off in an upward and forward-facing direction. If the spines don't catch and the back legs slip, the jump can end up like this, where the flea tumbles end over end as it launches itself into the air. So at this point, you might be wondering where I got all these fleas from in the first place. Well, it turns out you can order them. For our work, we weren't actually interested in the adult fleas, so what came in the box was a little bit more than that. The dishes that arrived to the lab looked like this. They were filled with a granular substrate and lined at the brim with eager adult fleas, which, as you might imagine, made them a real pain to get open. That substrate was mostly food for the larval fleas, with a bunch of unhatched flea eggs mixed in. And if you're wondering what food for larval fleas is, well, here's perhaps the grossest recipe ever. You mix together sand, dried cow blood, cat chow, and adult flea feces. Yum. After a few days in the lab, the flea eggs start to hatch. I was able to catch a few eggs hatching by setting up a time-lapse video. Here you can see one emerging from the eggs. Watching this happen up close, you can see how the fully formed larva is actually already mobile when it's still inside the egg. It twists and turns until its head lines up with the spot where the egg has been slashed through and broken open. Once it pokes through that spot, it wiggles the rest of its body free and dives down into the larval substrate. In time-lapse, you can see how mobile these newly hatched fleas are. They immediately burrow and dive around the clumps of hatched and unhatched eggs. So this is where our research comes in. We wanted to know exactly what these larvae were doing to move around. It turns out that bit of their biology hadn't really been well described. Of course, before this, people knew that cat flea larvae move. Here's what larval movement looks like in real time. When past researchers have mentioned and described this movement, here's what they said was going on. In a paper from 1914, the larva bends down the head, hooking what one may call its chin over some relatively fixed object. Then muscle draws up the rest of the body. And then later, in the 1930s, one German paper on bat fleas noted that the larvae use their mouth and hind end to move, while a later one attributes the movement to the front part of their head. From there on, we haven't found many more detailed descriptions. So, the first thing we did was see if we could film how the larvae were interacting with the ground. The shot you see here shows that these two projections sticking down from the head are what the larvae are using while they crawl. They anchor them into the ground, then pull the body forward by flexing the head down and under. Each step is extending the head forward and reaching to repeat the process. I should also say that these shots were not easy to get. What you're seeing here was filmed at 5 times magnification and at 600 frames per second. The long and stiff hairs lining their body project backwards and seem to be supporting them and keeping them upright while they move. They also probably prevent them from slipping backwards when they reach their head forward during each step of the crawl. So after we saw that it was a specific head structure being used to interact with the ground, the next step was to image it. Here's a view of a larva we got under a scanning electron microscope. The whole body is on the left, and the middle is showing you the front and underside of the head. These projections off the head are the antennae, and these on the bottom are what you saw it use to pull itself across the ground, the maxillary palps. Maxillary palps are kind of a standard issue pair of insect mouthparts, usually with sensory functions. And for the cat flea we imaged, we didn't find any evidence of modifications that would hint at their involvement in larval movement. The only part hinting at that was how they project down and out of the head. It seems like this is the case for a lot of different fleas too. For instance, here's an SEM of a bat flea larva where you can see the maxillary palps also stick out and down. Next, we wanted to see if this movement strategy changed across their development. So, we filmed and measured crawling like this across 50 different individuals. After doing that, Jake here, a student researcher on the project, measured the head width of each of the larvae to determine which stage of development each one is at. Doing this sorts the larvae into 3 size classes that correspond to the 3 stages or instars of larval development. And the first instars move the slowest at 1.2 millimeters per second, while the second and third move about the same speed at 2.6 and 2.5 millimeters per second. But when scaled to body length, all larvae move at similar rates, ranging from 0.7 to 0.6 body lengths per second. And that's actually pretty fast. For instance, an earthworm only averages around 0.1 body lengths per second. As a last step, we filmed the larvae in a 3D environment, a carpet sample, to see if they still moved in the same way. And they do. So no matter what larval stage or environment they find themselves in, cat fleas seem to use this movement and this behavioral strategy for pulling themselves across the ground. So for us, this has been an interesting thing to film and describe. Relative to other insects we've worked on, fleas are really well studied. So it's cool to still be able to contribute something new to our understanding of these organisms. Everything you just saw here will eventually be published in the scientific literature, but for now, that's it for the flea research. Thanks for watching.